Welcome to another session of Dialogue with Prof Mandi Rukuni. Tonight's session is a continuation from Wednesday's topic of why unemployment is a hoax, our traditional African economic philosophy explained. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So yes, I still believe that unemployment is a hoax, and that we have solid evidence from our African heritage as why this is the case. You will recall last time I had started going into some of the cultural heritage issues, but let me just split them between kind of individual and family cultural habits, and then the societal ones, which are key to addressing this issue. So historically, really, what was pushed into individuals was a culture of hard work and perseverance. There was a huge dose of saving and investment. If you look at the way everything was used in society, huge amount of sustainable use of natural resources, saving wherever you can. There was no wastage. There was respect for all things created by nature and the creator, because you only use them sparingly. Even food was respected. You sit down, fold your legs, and respect the food you eat with gratitude. So that was big. Collective responsibility was huge, and an attempt to have a peaceful environment was great, because you can't have prosperity without peace and stability. But all this comes together at societal level, where two important qualities of society made it possible to advance society. Now those are crumbling. The first one was strong families. Families were extremely strong, united. They loved each other. They were united. We used to say, if you go for one of us, you've gone for all of us. It was simple, So strong families, even today, is a cultural trait which you have to rebuild, because within a short space of colonial interaction, we now gone completely the other way, where the families are weak. We don't work together as strongly as we did historically. And we actually imbibed the colonial fallacy that you don't work with family, you don't need a strong family, you're just an individual. And as a result, we're not able to use the family as an economic unit. You see, the moment the family becomes a massive, strong economic unit, everyone gets fully employed. There's no unemployment there. Then strong communities were only possible because of strong families. You can't have strong individuals with weak families. Then you cannot have strong communities with weak families. Strong communities are ones that are capable to then preserve the prosperity, the wealth that is created. The natural resources are sustainably managed, because families are strong enough to address the issues and are capable of intervening to ensure that there's no, just irresponsible consumption of natural resources, and that all the social misendeavor and misbehavior, like petty thefts, violence, and so on, are managed in society, not waiting for police. Only when society is strong enough to govern itself, to be able to determine what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior, and actually mete out the justice. Until African governments, African intellectuals, African NGOs, until Africans right across the board realize that, until we rebuild strong families and strong communities, we're going to be a broken society. We're going to be a society looking for salvation, looking for jobs all over the place which don't exist. A future Africa requires those cultural strengths. So I would say, taking it to contemporary times, I've sold to you the idea of upgrading the industrial process. And I've sold this idea over and over again. I won't tire mentioning that you don't jump from one industrial activity to the next, a big company manufacturing something there and something else happening over there. No, everyone and everything is part of industrial upgrading. That's the attitude I want to leave with you, to say, even if in your village, in your home, there's no single machine, it does not matter. You are still at an early stage of industrial upgrading. The fact that you already process food, the women are processing food, the men are doing this, and it's everything from oils, grains, pulses, fruits, vegetables, meats. We are already processing them without machines, without factories. It's the early stage of industrial upgrading. And as we do that, we never became unemployed. Just because we did not have machines, just because we did not have cash, that never caused unemployment, because the families and the communities were self-reliant. The lifestyle was such that everybody was fully employed. So I'm just saying the next stage is the proto-industries. And I explained already before that that's when we go to the next stage of producing and adding value to foods and products without having to build factories in the villages and townships. And at each stage, the same factors of production on the right there come into play. It's always about your land and natural resources you have access to. It's your labor and how you use your labor. It's all the connections in society that make it possible to create a dynamic economic, social and economic interaction. It's the technology, whichever way you want to look at it. It doesn't have to be modern technology. You know, today, in most of Africa, in my own country, Zimbabwe, we've got probably 500,000 young people involved in artisanal mining, makorokoza. They're using ancient technologies to mine. They're not even using any modern technology, but they're mining more gold than big mines. You can go on and on. So technology is always at play, but how do we fast track and upgrade it? And I already last time explained capital. So at each stage, what's happening is we are in between primary stage of industry without any machines to proto, because some proto industries have come in. Then we got a big jump with a big gap here, a few factories employing very few people, manufacturing one, two, or three things, much less than is commensurate with what you might call industrial society. Because if it was industrial society, every town will be manufacturing and every other person will be employed in a factory and the rest in offices and banks and the service sector. So it is important to realize that at each stage of those industrial processes, you can have full employment. At proto-industrial stage, you can still have full employment because it's the configuration of those factors of production and commensurate with the lifestyle of people at that stage. So at light industry, heavy industry stages, as we go across, all that can be possible with quote unquote full employment. So it is important for our youngsters, especially, who are looking at quote unquote unemployment in the face, I'm not employed. Whether you're in the rural area or you're in the urban area, you're still unemployed. So I'm saying if you focus on people's lifestyles, because employment is a result of one engaging in activities that allow you to interact with others, that allow you to exchange goods and services with others. It's about upgrading people's lives. So I think the first thing to do is just look around your own family and your own home and say, how do I upgrade this homestay, this lifestyle we are having here, from everything you eat, everything you read, everything you clothe, what you listen to, how you interact with people. That entire lifestyle around your family and home can be upgraded. And you can look at others and figure out what it is that you can produce or supply or upgrade at home level that will create wealth. By the time you get to village level, there are many, many things that are not happening in our villages because we don't see them as economic villages. And yet, proper economic development starts at home and in the village, because it's the same thing. It's now a little bit of agglomeration happening. That's what a village is. So if people are a little bit grouped around the way they live, now they are looking for extra services beyond what they just need individually. They're beginning to look at each other across. How do we support each other? We'll need a school, or support the school. We'll need a road, or support a better road. Whatever it is, many, many things that communities need. And this is why I'm saying strong families and strong communities mean strong business. And when I look at our small towns in most of Africa, still no manufacturing. However, I'm saying we can still upgrade these small towns by us, especially youngsters, once again, going in there and looking at people's lifestyles and always asking the question, what do they value? How can we improve the lifestyles of people? How can we innovate around that? You see, I was talking to somebody just the day before yesterday. Somebody said to me, oh my goodness, you're going to talk about unemployment is a hoax? I said, yeah. Then he said, but by the way, actually, when I thought about it, I thought maybe, what's wrong with the professor? What are you talking about? But then he said to me, then I remembered that one day I was asking one youngster what he had just started at university, and he had graduated in degree in business and entrepreneurship, but he had no job. So how do you complete a whole degree in entrepreneurship and you still don't have a job? Isn't that some kind of a weird thing? Because when you, if you are going to do a degree in entrepreneurship, it means you are forever going to be employed, because entrepreneurship means you are not going to sit down waiting for something to happen. You are going to make things happen. So that's the weird situation we are in. So it's a mindset thing. I got this diagram just to summarize the mindset issue, to say the reason we are unemployed is because we got a fixed mindset of what employment is. Those who never run out of work have got a growth mindset, because with a growth mindset, you tell yourself you can learn anything. You don't wait to be told what you're going to learn or decide I'll only learn this. So it becomes important to understand that you should be ready to learn anything. If you've got a growth mind, you will never be unemployed. But if you've got a fixed mind, yeah, they say, I'm not good at that, that's not me, blah, blah, With a growth mind, when frustration sets in, you just persevere, you just keep going, If you got a fixed mind, you give up, With a growth mind, you challenge yourself, you innovate, you experience, you explore. With a fixed mind, you don't like to be challenged. It makes you feel bad, So failure, it means you're not good enough if you got a fixed mind. But for somebody with a growth mind, failure is just some extra lesson. It's something extra to learn. So we need to grow growth minds in our schools. People just have to know that that is actually what life is about. Life is not about some predetermined pathway, because the universe will never allow you to have a predetermined pathway. It will allow you here and there to achieve what you want to achieve, but mostly even when you achieve it, you may have had to to go through unexpected ways. So I also wanted to explain what power is and how power is a very elusive thing for people, and that's why they feel powerless. That's why they feel they are unemployed. It's not a very nice topic to discuss because the reality of the world is not as nice as what we want to believe, but actually that's reality. If you look at the source of power in the world, violence is at the top of the list as the source of power. Those who can mete out the most violence are the most powerful, either by way of nationally or country, all the way down. Ability to mete out violence is at the top of the list, unfortunately. So you don't have to be the most civilized society. If you can mete out more violence, you can overrun more civilized societies. The next is organized ideology, ability to sell to others what the truth is, religion, politics, education, all those things. That would be the second most important source of power. And then money, because money can also buy the top ones, can buy a bit of politics, can buy violence. But when you go below now, the next source of power is knowledge. But if you look at knowledge, you see the reason why knowledge is not at the top of the list as you would have thought it would be. The reason is that when you have knowledge, you can share the knowledge and you still have it. When you share knowledge, you still have it. So for that reason, you're not going to be as powerful as you want. You're going to be powerful, but not as powerful as if you can just have lots of money and do whatever you want to do, or have political power. So it is a lack of understanding of how power structures are organized by our people, why we are not able to understand how to convert all this into seriously positive power source from village to family. Because the moment society is not able to reorganize this from individual family to community, then it's going to be an industrial model which lands us where we are today. Then it doesn't matter what you do, you don't have much say in who's going to have access to capacity to destroy and be violent and all the way down. So a lot of our youngsters need to understand power and how to use power positively, so that you're always kind of in charge of contributing to a better and positive society. So I'd like to end my talk on a series of slides which just basically talk about, therefore, what should we as governments, as NGOs, as universities, as educational institutions, what should we as Africans prioritize in developing self-drive mindset in people? Because that's what it boils down to. An unemployed person who believes that unemployed is because they don't have self-drive. So how do we engender self-drive mindsets, not just in individuals, but in communities, in families and communities? Because if there's anything that you want to take me to task on and take home, is this thing here. Without self-drive at individual, family, and community level, and think we're going to have it somehow start appearing at national level, is a lie. So self-drive mindset is what makes it possible to find answers from within the individual from within the family. How to generate own vision, dream for yourself, the family dreams for itself, the community dreams for its community, and then self-organize around that. Self-start, self-assess, self-organize as you go, self-correct as you go. But if there's no confidence at that level, the self-drive mindset is going to die very quickly, and people are going to be unemployed very quickly. So it's about ability to recognize and use opportunities, manage conflict, even evolve your own understanding of who you are, that change in self-understanding of yourself, your family, your community, ability to initiate changes, and so on and so forth. Next one. So self-drive mindsets enable individuals and communities to develop their own capacity for civic participation, for social and economic building of capital, taking an initiative and engaging with outsiders with confidence and ability, and driving their own aspirations. Learn to think and act for self. These are behaviors which become reinforced as these actions create positive results. And if we can retain the brain, somebody said in the last session, retain the brains in the community, retain as many of the young people in the community, and actually show that the home, the village can create more economic activity than the township out there in Harare and Bulawayo, then we are on our way. So this requires 3 levels of applying knowledge for transformation. I always say that this, to me, is a simplified way of saying, how do you create opportunities for oneself? How do you reach a point where you don't feel unemployed? First, you're faced with a situation, you have problems. The first level of applying knowledge is improvement change. That is using the knowledge that you already have, that the community already has, that your cultural group already has, using knowledge that you have to solve problems, to improve your situation. When that fails, and now you think, what do we do? Then you go to level 2, that is borrowing from others, learning from others. But once again, in Africa, we need to be learning more, borrowing more intelligently rather than just copy and paste, as I said last time. And this is where I think Africa now needs to be really fast tracking, because we have to do better than the Asians did, because the Asians did a brilliant job of intelligent borrowing, and then whatever they borrowed, they converted into an Asian idea. You see, now we need to be doing more at level 2. And then level 3, the kind of self-drive mindset is really being able to identify where there's need for a paradigm shift, identifying that what we know and believe and have been doing for long no longer works, or now needs to be adjusted. There's need to change, or the world has changed sufficiently for us to do things differently and be able to still remain who we are, use our heritage, use our wisdom to chart a new understanding of who we are or where we want to go. And we also now, as Africans, are far short at level 3. Level 1 is survived because our culture is so powerful, and the social construction of African society was the best in the world. So it has survived everything, including colonialism and religions and educational systems which destroy it. It's still there, but it's suffering. But level 2 and 3 is where the real value is going to come, to quickly build social and economic capital, which sees full employment for all of us at all stages of industrial upgrading. Thank you very much. I think I'll end it there.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. Before we get into, there is a question from one of the guests. They're saying you do not expand on love, on how love plays a part as far as knowledge is concerned.
Oh, you want me to answer that first? Huh?
Yes, please.
Actually, if you look at the reason why love is at the bottom of the list is actually because it's potentially the most powerful. Potentially the most powerful. Just, I mean, the power of connecting and the power of having a common mind. The power of love is amazing. But the reason why it is not the most important tool used in the world is once again because you can give love or even share love and it doesn't diminish. You don't lose it by sharing it. And because of the mindset in the world which has grown towards individualism, consumerism, greed, and all that, that doesn't count very much. Anything that makes you, that you can share and you still have it, you give to somebody else, you still have it, it's not a very popular form of power. People want power where you are the only one who's got it. And with money and so on, when you share it, then you have less money, then you have less power. So that's really what I would say. You know, that's why you see love at the bottom of the list.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. There's another question here. Whose responsibility is it to retain these minds, and how do we go about getting this individual accountability that will transform into group accountability?
Excellent question. Excellent question, because that's where we are suffering from what I would call path dependency. Because if you go back into traditional African society, that's all that counted. From the day you're born, is drilled into you. This is who you are. This is what's good for you, good for family, good for the community, good for the forests, good for the animals in the forest. It was drilled into you all the time. You didn't go to university, you didn't go to school, there was no book to read. So it was drilled into you to such an extent that it was very easy to apply and enforce. I remember even my generation are old enough to remember a time when you would walk in the forest and you would never cut down a tree which is not supposed to be cut down. You would never harvest a fruit tree before it was ready. There's many things you would not do, not because there's somebody watching you or somebody will give you a ticket, Emma will give you a ticket, the environmental agency will find you and send you to jail. No, it was your conscience was your policeman. That's dead. Okay. So what's the substitute? What is supposed to be the substitute is what has now caused the past dependency for us. It's now broken down into an educational system, an industrial form of religion, you know, an industrial form of politics, and therefore it's not possible to enforce those values the way the traditional system would do it without spending 1 cent. Today, the only way to enforce it is through laws, systems and procedures, which are enforced by courts, by what have you, by systems of planning and development and educational system, which makes it possible for a government to intervene whenever it's possible. So even if you're messing up your family and you are quote unquote abusing them, the government will be right at your doorstep the Department of Social Services will come and say, no, that's not the way to bring up children. We are taking them away from you. That's what happens in the industrialized nations. We don't have that kind of economy or those kinds of systems. We don't even want them, in my own opinion. So we are down a path which we know it doesn't work. We just don't know how to go back to the path that we left in traditional society, which was so cost effective, the most efficient social security system in the world. Without spending a cent, you had the most solid social security system in the world, protected the environment, protected the orphans. There was effect. There were no destitute people. You had a family, you always had a family. So anyway, to recreate it now requires a level of national consciousness, which says we have to revamp all those key institutions of society. But I would always start at family and community, because if those institutions continue to decay, the national system, even if we become wealthy and all of a sudden we have all the budgets in the world to build a court in every village and policemen in every village and so on and so forth, it will still be difficult to create the kind of society that we believe is an advanced society. So we need to, to rebuild the political, educational, religious systems, but I would say that's secondary to rebuilding the family and community systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for answering those questions. I'm now opening up the floor to anybody who's got contributions and questions. Please use the hand reaction button and we'll unmute you.
Leonie Timothy, your hand is up. Please, can you unmute and ask?
Thank you very much, Prof. My question is on when you were saying you gave us the list of the sources of power, and one of the things which was there is knowledge. So I want to ask a question in relation to that issue of knowledge. I understand here in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is actually regarded as one of the literate countries in Africa. So my question is, why Africa, why Zimbabwe is still underdeveloped or is struggling to go to the upper economy or to upper middle economy while we're having the highest number of literacy? So that is my first question. My second question is on the issue of what do you think on the Zimbabwean syllabuses, like university syllabus, secondary school syllabuses, college syllabus? Are those syllabuses still relevant in building the mindset of us or of youth or anyone? What do you think there? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alioni. We've got Musonza.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, Professor, because you said an important thing when you talked about how, traditionally, not in the very distant past, probably as you were coming up and those of a generation, it didn't cost a cent to look after things, to maintain certain values and maintain our environments and maintain our resources and so on, because the individual just took responsibility, and your conscience was what guided you. But I think it was the no need for assent, because I guess the concept of assent was not as strongly entrenched as maybe it is now. And I was just wondering, are we hopeless to restore anything in the presence of the power of the sent? Because so much of that ties back to this need to acquire power through what is the most commonly accessible source, which is money. If I can get some money by harvesting these fruits ahead of time and putting them somewhere where they ripen and no one else has them, then I can charge everyone else for whatever it might be that I'm abusing at a given time. Ties into money. How likely are we to correct the situation when money is as now established such a grip on us in terms of what we value and how we value it, and our behavior? I'm just curious about
that. Thank you very much for that. Over to you, Prof.
Thanks. So Alion asked about knowledge. So, and pointed out Zimbabwe is by far the most literate of countries on the African continent. So why aren't we thriving? So I would say that knowledge, there's a danger of equating information with knowledge. So if you go to university, you do a degree in engineering, or you do a degree in agriculture or education, there's a danger of classifying that as knowledge. It's not knowledge, because knowledge only exists at the point of action. So knowledge is what you actually use to get things done. It's not what you store in your head or in your laptop or in the library, you see. So knowledge is what an ordinary person who doesn't even have 1 day of schooling, is what they use to plant this maize or to process this peanut butter, or to harness the energy of an animal so that you can plow. That's knowledge. So knowledge only exists at the point of action. So the fact that in the United States or Europe or industrialized country, the same educational degree, so to speak, would produce somebody who is actually effective in a factory, does not mean to say, in our case, it's knowledge. It's just information until it starts to be used. So Zimbabwe can have the highest literacy rate on the continent. It does not mean it's knowledge, because if it was knowledge, it would be used on a daily basis. If it was, like I said, my little story, if you listen to it, we have kids with degrees in business entrepreneurship. I mean, but they're not employed. So, and they're not working, they're not running anything. So that's a weird definition of entrepreneurship, isn't it? It's the same thing as knowledge. Knowledge, entrepreneurship, all those things mean unstoppable, always doing something, always creating something, always applying something. That's what those terms mean. Knowledge, entrepreneurship are active terms. These are for people who are unstoppable. They've got so much self-drive, they will dream big, and failure is just another lesson. They'll keep moving. They'll learn as they go. Whereas what you have described as knowledge education for Zimbabwean is, well, I have this education. If I don't apply it the way I learned it at school, therefore I'm unemployed. Okay. So obviously this is not so much the syllabus that is to change. It's the way of learning. You see, the educational system has to shift from teaching to learning. Okay, because when you get taught and then you get examined, it's a completely different process to learning for yourself. I'm learning to do something. When you learn, it means that you're acquiring knowledge to apply, because you're learning to apply something. You see, but the way we use the term learn means you are available as a vessel to be pumped by a teacher or lecturer to say, yes, here's the information, now you're learned. Okay, So learning is an active verb, okay. Information is a noun, you know. So we have to shift towards learning processes which imbibe the values that we were talking about earlier. To say the values that need to be imbibed is, wow, I'm so lucky to be alive, to be here. And I think it means I have to do something with my life. I'm not going to wait for somebody to tell me to learn. I'm not going to wait for somebody to tell me to work. I'm not going to wait for anybody to tell me to create something, to explore things. If we can get that right in the educational system, if we can get that right from family level before the youngster is even 3, 4, 5 years old, by the time they go to the so-called schools, they are no longer detracted by the limited scope of schools. We need to change the educational system anyway. And that's why I thought the COVID virus pandemic was an opportunity for us to really say the schooling system is dead. It's a dead duck. The kids should stay at home. Well, the reason why we want to send our kids back to school is because we don't know what to do with them at schools. We don't know how to teach them anything anymore. So we are begging governments to open schools. So then Msonzo was talking about money and why all of a sudden things which used to happen are no longer happening because of the sand. And that's another path dependency that we have taken ourselves down the road, and we don't know how to get out of it. As I explained last time, maybe I didn't explain it in detail. Even if you go to the most advanced countries in terms of economics, whether China, the United States, Germany, name it, money actually is less than 15% of the wealth that is held in banks, you know, the financial services institutions, you know, pension funds, all forms. If you look at all forms of wealth, cash is a tiny little bit. So even when you deposit your money into the bank in cash, the bank is not stupid enough to keep your cash in cash form, because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't add value. They keep that 10, 15, 20% in cash form just to transact, to move things, to be able to transact. The really wealthy people don't even need cash. Okay, it's only the poor who need it. So the point is that we reached a point now where we confuse cash with wealth. Okay, we confuse cash with wealth. So we don't even know the true value of cash, because there's so many things happening to it that whatever you are being told by the market is the value of the cash is hardly true anyway. So for start, it's the wrong measure to figure out social a return to anything. Okay, so that's why last time we spoke on this hoax issue, I was suggesting that each time you really want to think deeply about how we get out of the situation we are in, socially, economically, politically, you almost need to start by putting cash aside and say, assume there's no cash in this world, assume there's no cash in this country. What would we be doing at home? What would we be doing in the community to have an advanced life? Then when you go through that path, you're gonna then figure out 85% of the right things to do. Then when you bring cash into the equation, you have actually figured out the most important part. But what's happening is the other way around. We start off by saying, what do we do to get our child to have an education so that they can have a job, so that they can have cash? So you start by destroying the wealth you have to send them to school, pay fees, and then you're still paying for their subsistence even after they graduate. So you just walked yourself into poverty because you're thinking cash, cash, cash. So to think wealth, Sonza, is a different process to thinking cash. And maybe it's a social experiment I'm suggesting, and I'm happy to do this kind of experiment with some people. I've done it for myself here and there, where we actually rebuild the economy from village, from family to village, to province, to national level, by subtracting cash from the equation and figuring real wealth, real exchanges, real connections between people and products and services, which have to happen outside cash, to create a powerful social and economic transformation. Then you realize that going through that planning process without cash in mind, when you bring cash in afterwards, it's now leveraging at the top. It's not the basis. And that's why youngsters are running businesses that failed. I mean, the number of youngsters businesses failing today, it's amazing because they think it's about cash. So when you go and borrow cash to start a business or run a business, you make mistakes or you spend the money on the wrong thing. It's much easier to spend and lose the money than it is actually to create the equivalent amount of wealth to be able to pay for the loan, because you started in the wrong place. So you're better off putting cash out of the equation, take the job out of the equation. A lot of people who have been interviewed just before they die, or they and say, what do you regret most in your life? It's amazing. A part of it is just this thing that you take a job for your lifetime and then you don't have a life. Then you realize afterwards that was not life. Life is something else. I'm probably overspoken on this one.
Oh, thank you very much, Prof. There's another question here. With the increase in urban population and families, where people are highly diverse and individualistic than a communal setup, what do you recommend as the best strategies that brings confidence for urban communities to work collectively at local level? And then there's a question from Blessing. Blessing, please unmute.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof, for your presentation. I wanted to ask, given that there's been...
Sorry, someone's mic is still on. Hello, Blessing.
Yes, thank you, Kevin, for the chance. I wanted to ask that what is the key to the recent economic development in Asia? Because I can see that Asia and Africa, they were both colonized. So is it culture or visionary leadership plus governance, or plus good governance, or it's something else? What is really impeding economic development in Africa? That's my question to Prof. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Blessing. Over to you, Prof.
Now, on the first question on urban, on urban society, which is problematic throughout the continent. I am a fellow of the Uganda National Academy of Sciences, and I've been on a number of their East Africa, consensus studies, and one of them is about urban life and urban cities and urban sustainability of urban centers and cities in East Africa. And it was an eye opener for me, because what is the way I've kind of interpreted it, and part of the contribution I made in that setting was that if you look at traditional African society, which worked on Udugu, Ubuntu, Hunu type arrangement, it's about and I mentioned three mutualities: mutual respect of peoples and cultures of different beliefs and so on, mutual benefit, knowing when to come out of the individual pursuit into the group benefit, and being able to not just mutually respect, but also see mutual benefit. And then finally, mutual accountability or mutual responsibility. And what has happened with colonization is, as people shifted from from rural to urban, that mutual, three mutualities crash even faster. You still have some semblance of it in rural society, where you still find communities which actually try and work together. In urban areas, that was never engendered during the colonial period. So what you actually have, it's a much quicker slide in the way people come together into functional units, into functional communities, because it's all European based. Ratepayers Association. What is a Ratepayers Association in African cultural experience? No, it doesn't exist. What existed were village communities which functioned in very closely knit ways because the social fabric was well known. Okay, now in urban areas, everybody is different, is foreign. You can live next door to somebody, you may not even know them. So the idea of creating functional municipalities, functional urban management systems is more difficult. So there's more individualism, there's more greed, there's more selfishness. And we never, it's made worse by the fact that the cities are not manufacturing. They are not economic cities. There's not one city on the African continent with the kind of manufacturing capacity that has devolved into the countryside, into many other urban centers that are manufacturing, and you have a vibrant a number of percentage of the population which is a viable tax base or a viable rate-payer base. So I'm sorry, once again, I'll say it in a way that may be a bit controversial, but it doesn't matter how much good governance you have. It doesn't matter how good your people are. They may not even be corrupt at all. It does not mean to say you're going to have a viable city. It's not going to happen. I saw it from a distance in South Africa, where every municipality, people are toying for poor service delivery. Well, it's fine. So corruption and maladministration makes it even more difficult. But that's not the main reason why those cities are not delivering. None of them are economically viable. None of them are manufacturing. None of them are economic centers. They are commercial centers and administrative posts. Okay, so never mind, Zimbabwe is one of the better countries when it comes to that, because at least there's been a bit of manufacturing in Harare and Bulawayo at best. In most instances, cities are just dormitories. So the thought that somehow you're going to create a vibrant, innovative, really exciting society in our urban centers is a little bit far-fetched, because it is really not economically viable. It's nothing to do with, well, or shall I say, good governance and so on count, but that's not the main reason why we are suffering. Then on the Asia one, I think the main difference between the Asians who were colonized and the Africans who were colonized is that the Asians had far stronger societal structures around religion and culture. So yes, they were colonized, but they never gave up their own gods. They never gave up their own cultures the way we did. And because of that reason, they were more confident, quicker off the block to be able to borrow more intelligently. The Japanese did not need to borrow any culture from the Western world, nothing. Their culture was far superior already. So all they needed to borrow was the technology, you know? And then when they go and borrow the technology, they could teach it in their own language. you know, when the Japanese started borrowing Western technology because it was more advanced than theirs, they would go and copy industrial chemistry or auto engineering or military science over there. They come back, they teach every single thing in Japanese language. They never taught it in a foreign language. Yeah, so, and when the Japanese started teaching themselves foreign languages, those institutes they created, somebody was saying to me, if you translate the original name given to those institutes where Japanese were learning foreign languages, it would be equivalent to Institute for Learning Barbaric Languages. You know. And if you go back to our traditional African society and how it reacted to Western invasion back before colonization, it was the same thing. They would say, oh, there were two people working in the European, so they were not supposed to be real people, you know. Like somebody would, you know. Anyway, the long and the short is the Asians, I think, were not as colonized mentally as we were. We were colonized intellectually, culturally, spiritually, felt and still traumatized to a point where when we go to Europe, we spend more time borrowing their mannerisms and their table manners than borrowing the technology and converting it into African technology. Never mind ability to advance our own original, highly advanced technological ideas. So I'm afraid most of the economies on the continent, on the African continent, who are not structured in the way that they can grow until they are restructured. But very few governments are aware of the fact that it's not about how well you're going to manage, because even some of the best managed economies on the continent still will just grow 1, 2, 3, 4%. They are not going to transform and gallop the way the Asian tigers galloped, because the structure of the economy excludes the majority of the people. They are not manufacturing. We are busy importing other people's manufactured goods. We don't have a domestic market for the manufactured goods that we manufacture locally because we haven't created it. So we've got a disconnected dual economy. We've got the majority of the people disconnected, and therefore both urban and rural centers are dormitories. Okay, whereas in an industrializing country, both the urban and the rural are economically integrated. They're all busy and buzzing. In the rural areas, busy mass producing raw materials and pre-processing them and earning high incomes, while the urban cities are growing with factories and creating more of that type of industrial employment. So I'm just saying for Africa, we can still do it, but the way to do it is to operate on the idea that there's no unemployment. You are just at a stage of development where the type of employment is not what you think it should be and what you're trying to teach in your universities. We should be teaching basic production, proto-manufacturing, teaching how to manufacture goods without factories, teaching how to add value to things, teaching how to improve lifestyles of people with what you have, not what you don't have that you wish to have. Some donor is going to bring it for you or some foreign investor is going to bring to you. It's not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. There's one more, we'll take one more question after there's this question in the inbox from Take Sure. So what is the way forward? Are we supposed to start by addressing the culture first when people are hungry? That's a question. And is there any other question we'll take before Prof closes down, and then he shares his final thoughts on Telegram and WhatsApp?
That last question is a brilliant question. It's a very important question. So let me answer you philosophically first, and then try and give you a practical way forward. For every problem that you have or that we experience, there's at least 5 levels at which you can analyze that problem and come up with a different answer. Okay. So when you ask the question, since people are hungry, are we able to reconstruct society so that it functions better at family and community level before we can really address all these hunger and poverty that we are seeing. Can we really do it? I think that's the question that's been asked. No, now that question, when you answer it at the lowest level of strategy, that is at what I call event level. What can we just do to make sure people eat something? Food aid, bring this, bring that, NGO here, a church there, food for work there. Maybe we organize something for the small farmers to be able to sell to the GMB, or try and see if you can give them a subsidy. So in other words, your answer is based on the events you're seeing happen, is the least strategic way of long-term solutions to society. So the answer would be, oh no, we have to do something. It's more important to do something now than to really work on the strategic aspects, because people are hungry. But 20 years down the road, people are still hungry. 40 years down the road, people are still hungry. So have you really achieved anything? No, you haven't. Because there's 3 more levels besides the event level. Because if you look at the trends of poverty and why we're having, you come up with a different answer. You see a pattern there, and you think, whoa, maybe we concentrate on this sector. Maybe it's mining, maybe it's tourism, maybe let's support the agriculture like this. And then when donors come in, no, don't give those don't need support. The ones that are really vulnerable are these ones. That's at the next level of strategy. But when you start to be really strategic, like at the 3rd level, you now ask the question, for us to have these trends, it means there are systems in place, which are social, economic, political systems, which have created these trends and events. So what are the systems that we have in place, the institutions, the structures that are creating this poverty? Now you're beginning to start, you're only at stage 1 of asking the strategic question. You're not even at the level that I was pushing you at. Okay. Because at that level, you are looking at economic policy, development policy, what do we do? Maybe, and you're beginning to question, maybe even the educational system is not right. Some of the things we're talking about here already begin to come in. Do we have the right, education, religion, the political system? So now that's the middle level strategies that you begin to interrogate. But once again, depending on what the lower levels are like, you can get lost into rabbit holes, where instead of discussing political systems with a small p of how you self-govern, you are busy into party politics, and then you are at each other's throats, and you still lose the game. Okay, so at the next level, when you go higher than systems and structures, then you are now at a level where you are beginning to really talk about, so what exactly is the vision? What type of society are we trying to create? What type of vision, what type of desired society created the structures we have? Like in the case of Africa, colonized Africa, the structures we have were somebody's idea of an ideal society for them, where they could oppress Africans and they were slaves and work for them. All we did was take the bottom 3 levels of analysis. We took the structures, we thought it's not the structures. And so we inherited systems and structures which we did not want and still don't want to interrogate at a higher level, which says, but can they produce the kind of society you want to produce? Now, I'm sorry, the answer is no. Even if you have the best people in the educational system, the best people in the banks, the best people in the political system, the structures were never built for the kind of society that you really want to see as an advanced African civilization. So at a higher level than that, then you then ask the question, exactly what kind of society are we trying to build? Exactly what kind of society should it be functioning like? At the lowest level, when you walk into somebody's home, the village, the family, how is it? How should it function? How do we self-govern at village level? How do we self-govern at ward level? How do we have an economic system which will include everyone? You are now at the highest level of strategic thinking, and the answers you come up with are different to the question that you asked me, should we be worrying about all these things when people are hungry? Because at that level, you are saying, well, you know what? If we don't leverage this thing at the highest level of strategic perception and understanding, we could still be where we are 100 years from now. And for sure, Zimbabwe will be running 40 years. Other countries in Africa have been running 60 years. So why hasn't it changed? Just because you're running around trying to address material poverty. It's not about material poverty, I'm afraid. It's about intellectual poverty and spiritual poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. There's just one more question and then we close it up from Snikisiwe. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Please unmute.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Prof, for your inputs into this discussion. If I'm following you correctly, it appears the picture for Africa remains bleak. But I wonder, when I look at Rwanda, I wonder what economic model they are following, because I haven't been there, but going by research, it appears their life has changed for the better. They were colonized and they went through a very difficult patch, but they've bounced back and they are doing very well. What is the story there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof, would you like to respond to that? And then I shut down the session after your response.
Sure. I think Rwanda is doing quite well, given where they've come from and given the circumstances. So by African standards, it's quite plausible the way they have tried to rebuild society, the way they have tried to figure out how to bring a certain level of discipline in the way services are delivered, in the way that people perform at personal and community level. It's all plausible. Rwanda, however, is still a very poor country. And Rwanda still has to leverage a lot of, so they have options to move forward. So one option would be like a typical outlier. So it would not be a typical African case. It would be an outlier, like in Asia, you have Singapore, which is really a city, but was able to develop into a powerful state, highly developed, and the economy highly powerful. So maybe Rwanda can go that direction because it really doesn't have the industrial base to have a regular industrialized economy. There's hardly any manufacturing. They still based rural economy, which is still not generating what you might call a light heavy industrial base. So, but by bypassing all that, like Singapore did as an outlier, and through services and so on, just build a powerful service economy that attracts the rest of the world to invest in it. I think they can pull through. But Rwanda should not be looked at, in my opinion, as a typical African country in that sense, because it's a small country. And like I say, it has options which are a bit different from the rest. Most of Africa is different. You really have to get the majority of rural people connected to the industrial processes. You really have to develop serious manufacturing capacity in most of the other African countries, because you don't have this unique setup like you have in Rwanda, where it's a small nation state. It's manageable at that level, and it is possible for it to maybe jump certain stages which an average African or even an average country, not even in Asia, not many countries in Asia can even do a Singapore, if you see what I mean. They still have to go through the regular Japan, South Korea, Vietnam now, India, China. They could not jump and do a Rwanda type of solution. They had to go through heavy duty connecting of rural to the urban economy with manufacturing and service sectors all buzzing. But I think Rwanda is being highly innovative, highly creative, and trying to build strong systems, pushing a digital marketplace, which they're pushing the service aspects at a higher level, which would probably make them pull the rest of the economy through that. The rest of Africa doesn't have those options. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. That brings us to an end of our session. Thank you all for your time and your contributions. Thank you, Prof Mandi, for a wonderful presentation and taking your time to share this knowledge with us today. Big shout out to the DWP technical team for putting this session together. Join us on our WhatsApp and Telegram groups where Prof will share his final thoughts for tonight's session. Please don't forget to like or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dialogue with Prof Mandi Rukuni, to enjoy more content which we'll share in the course of the month. Thank you very much and good night. See you in our next session.